after Orban's peace mission, what we find out is both Putin, Xi Jinping, and Viktor Orban have said, or at least this is Viktor Orban's words, we cannot confirm if they're true or not, but they all believe, these three world leaders believe, that there will be peace negotiations and talks before the end of this year. So, Scott, your reactions to the rapid pace of developments in recent days and weeks when it comes to, you had this NATO summit, but it was almost like Putin said, hold my beer. Now here's what really matters. So, Scott, your take.
Well, I mean, it's just that, this NATO summit's been on the calendar for some time now. It's the 75th anniversary of the creation of NATO this year. So it's going to be a big deal. And we've seen since the Ukraine conflict has begun that each NATO summit takes on more and more gravitas, becomes more and more of an existential gathering. We saw that in Madrid in 2022. We saw that in Vilnius in 2023, and we definitely see it in Washington, D.C. in 2024. The Russians aren't stupid, and they watched NATO set themselves up for failure. I mean, look at Vilnius last year. It was a huge failure. It was dependent upon the successful Ukrainian counteroffensive that never really got off the starting blocks. And so when, as they're leaning forward, expecting to, have this giant victory party about how great NATO is, how they empowered the Ukrainian victory over Russia, and how now they're going to put Russia in its place. Instead, they were there with Russia saying, we just beat you guys bad. And now what are you going to do about it? And the answer was nothing. The famous photograph of Zelensky isolated from everybody sort of said it all, the recognition that Ukraine will never be part of NATO. Now we have this Washington summit. And again, it was supposed to be predicated on some sort of success on the battlefield. But Russia's been taking it to Ukraine all year long. Ukraine doesn't have anything left. When the Russians came into the Kharkov area, that was seen as a chance. NATO said, aha, now we need you to attack and push them back at Volchansk and around there and wipe them out and have this victory that, see, the Russians bit off more than they can chew. Ukraine is capable of dramatic victories. Instead, Russia is just slaughtering them, burning through all the forces, meanwhile maintaining pressure on 11 separate points along the battlefield that Ukraine can't withstand. They set themselves up for failure. But Russia now isn't just in the business of letting NATO cancel itself. They're going to cancel NATO. And you saw this. Vladimir Putin set the stage at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. He spoke at the plenary session. He did two major press events, one with foreign correspondents, one with Russian correspondents. The Ukraine conflict, NATO has put Ukraine conflict on the front burners. It's everything. It's the single most defining issue of our time. Everybody around the West is talking about Ukraine, 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 Ukraine. What did Vladimir Putin talk about? The economy, the Russian economy, how great it is, how it's going to expand, how it's working, about BRICS, about the upcoming summit in October in Kazan. That's what he talked about. That's what he led off with. That's his priority. Only after he talked about that did he bring up, oh, yes, the Ukraine conflict, because it's not the defining issue for Russia right now. And this tells us everything. How did he set this NATO summit up? Well, the first thing, you remember, one of the big things about NATO is going to the Pacific. They invited some observers. I think Australia, New Zealand, Japan, South Korea were invited to sit in at the NATO summit. And Stoltenberg has been talking about the need to expand NATO into the Pacific. That's curious how you get a North Atlantic Treaty Organization now into the Pacific. But that's what he's doing. Now, so what did Putin do? Well, he went to North Korea. Then he went to Vietnam. And in one fell swoop, he just said, no, you're not going to do this. We're going to screw up your entire plans. The Japanese and the South Koreans now, instead of talking about NATO coming, they're going, oh, God, what do we do about North Korea and Russia? Oh, geez, that changed everything. We don't know. America's going, what the hell just happened? And the Australians are like, God, no. China, come here. We want to do trade with you. We don't want to, import New Zealand's like, what? Wait a minute. You invited us to a party and what? So, Putin just preempted it. You've been hearing people say, well, BRICS. it's never going to get off the ground because India and China don't get along well. Well, gosh, what was Putin's first state visit after becoming getting inaugurated? China. Big, nice meeting with Xi Jinping, all the pomp and ceremony. These guys have a rock solid relationship, and they made it clear that it is rock solid. And there it is. But people are like, the West is going to use India to drive a wedge between Russia and China. That's a guarantee. Oh, yeah. Well, now Modi's in Russia at the invitation of Putin. And I tell you what, if that's how you drive a wedge between Russia and India, I don't know, man. That was an indication of strong relations, common goals, and the kind of personal connection that is necessary. It's not just about two nations that need to get along. These are two leaders that want to get along. They want to make this work. They agree with each other. They view each other with mutual self-respect. And you don't drape the Order of St. Andrews around the neck of a leader half-hearted. And that's the highest award that Russia can give, military or civil. And Putin did that. The bear hug you talk about, the handshakes. This is genuine stuff. It's the kind of stuff we used to do. We used to have politicians that could do that. I didn't like George W. Bush very much. Still don't. But I'll tell you what, that son of a gun could invite somebody over, bring them down to Crawford, Texas, do them up a barbecue, shake their hands, go for a ride in the golf cart, have a conversation, make that human-to-human connection. And it worked. It works. When you have a human-to-human connection, it's amazing how it works. Today, we won't even talk to the Russians. But Modi's talking.
Hard to know if Biden can, but that's a whole other story.
Lincoln can, or yeah, Austin can. We
perhaps
look. I've been to Russia a couple times. They're very easy people to talk to because they're intelligent, they're informed, they want to have a conversation. It's not a conversation all about them. They're very interested in what you think. They're working to accommodate you. I mean, they're easiest people in the world to have a serious conversation with if we would just do it, but we're not. Well, Modi just had a serious conversation with Putin. And the interesting thing there is Putin said, and I'm inviting you in person to come to BRICS. Now, India was going to be at BRICS, but the question at what level? Well, Modi's coming now. It's going to be Putin, Modi. I'll bet you $1 Xi Jinping shows up. You ain't going to miss out on this. You get those three together, it's world changing, baby. It's world changing. Those three come together, they sit down at a table and they start talking about how they can function together. That's a world changing thing. Do you see what I just did here? I just talked for a long time without talking about the Ukraine conflict. Because for those guys, it doesn't matter. It's secondary. And that's the reality. We are so focused on the stupidity of this conflict that we're not going to win. That we're pouring our life's blood into in terms of the economy, diplomacy, etc. We're sacrificing everything. And Russia, China, and India are like, oh yeah, there's a war over there, but we'll get to that in a second. We're talking about this grand shift to multipolarity away from the American hegemon. What's the American hegemon doing? Instead of doing what we should be doing, which is, hey, let's talk about the pace of this transition. Let's talk about how we can work together to make this transition. Let's talk about how when there is a multipolar world, we're at a seat next to you. We want to be part of this change. We'd like to be a leader in this change. We'd like to be helping you make decisions about how this change is going to happen. That's what we should be doing. That's what sounds, because it's going to happen. We can't stop it. This is history. It's moving. But no, we're back here stuck. We're putting everything into this war, this losing effort that has no chance of victory. You said you can't, you said a while ago, you can't predict the demise of NATO. I'm predicting it. NATO ain't going to survive a decade. It's over. When this conflict ends in a defeat for NATO, you're going to see deep fractures in NATO, and you're going to see nations shed themselves of NATO. The frustrations in NATO are going to start coming out. There is going to be a decisive split between East and West. Germany and France and Italy are not going to align with Poland and the Baltic states. That's a guarantee. And Czechoslovakia is going to have to make a decision because Hungary, Bulgaria, and Slovakia are already saying, We don't want anything to do with this. And as they get isolated, they may choose to do, what's that word, that 5-letter word we've been throwing around? BRICS. What happens? Turkey basically was going EU, 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 EU. But every time they said EU, Europe was going, no, 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 no. So finally, Turkey went BRICS. And Russia went, yeah, BRICS, baby, come on in. That's the direction we're heading. We in the West have become a self-canceling society. We are canceling ourselves. We do it through sanctions. We do it through irresponsible military spending, and we do it by alienating the very people that we need to survive. We need Hungary. My God, you know how you not corrupt, that's the wrong word, how you co-opt Orban? Joe Biden should have picked up the phone and go, hey, Victor, interesting stuff you're doing. Why don't you come to the White House and talk to me about what you're up to? Tony Blinken's going to be there. Bring your foreign minister and let's have a conversation. Tell me what's going on. Brief me on it. Show some interest. And now Orban's going to go, wow, I wasn't expecting that. And so he's going to sit down. He's going to talk. And, you don't have to buy into it, but you just have to show interest. And then you can engage. And now you're controlling the conversation. So now Orban, instead of running off and doing things unilaterally with China and Russia, will always be going back, I wonder what America thinks. Why would he wonder that? Because America's listening. America's asking questions. America's engaged. America's now part of the process. It's so damn easy. It's the same way this great relationship that Russia and China have today. And it is a good relationship. But, listen to the Russians. They never say this is a deep, wonderful friendship with China. They always say you can pick your friends and, you can have a decision about who's going to be enemy, but you don't get to choose your neighbors. Your neighbors are there, and Russia and China have this massive border, which means that they have to live with each other. And so many Russians talk about the Russian-Chinese relationship as necessity, as opposed to a desire for this. So, the question is now, the United States, what could have it done? The Winter Olympics. Beijing Winter Olympics, or not Winter, Summer Olympics.
2022, yeah.
No, it was Winter Olympics, yeah, the Winter Olympics.
Yeah, it was Winter Olympics, yeah.
So Xi Jinping sitting there doing this big thing. Now we're just being the stupid Americans like we always are. It's horrible. Those damn commies are putting on an Olympics. Oh, we're not going to go there. We're not going to do this.
Look at the hazmat suits. It looks so bad. They forgot about the high-speed rail they built just for the Olympics. But, they forgot about all that. But yes, continue. Sorry.
So we're not there. But, so opportunity. Vladimir Putin's going to fly to Beijing and meet with Xi Jinping. Now, I have to tell you, if I were the national security advisor in the United States and I heard that Vladimir Putin's getting ready to fly to Beijing to meet with Xi Jinping, I go to Biden. I say, hey, boss, you're getting on an airplane tomorrow. We're going to the Beijing Olympics. You're stepping off that damn airplane, and the Chinese are going to have to respond to you. And Xi Jinping can't ignore you, because you're the American president coming to the damn Olympics. And guess who's going to be sitting there with his finger up his nose? Vladimir Putin. He's going to go, because he's thinking he's got this one-on-one that's going to happen. Xi Jinping's going to be going, Vlad, time out, pal. I got to go meet Joe at the airport. Simply flying to Beijing would have disrupted this, would have created a disruption, would have created a different dynamic. It doesn't mean that we had to bend the knee to China or anything. Suddenly China's engaged with you, which means that as they work to Russia, they always have to be looking back and thinking, well, what's America think on that? Because America's engaged in a constructive manner, hopefully. All Joe Biden had to do is fly to Beijing, get off the airplane, and shake Xi Jinping's hand, and it would have stymied the start of where Russia and China are today. Because, from that meeting came the 5,000 word joint statement that, created the foundation of this rapid transition to multipolarity. Why didn't Biden disrupt that? Because we don't have an imagination. Why doesn't Blinken be smart to say, let's bring Orban in and get a briefing. Let's engage with him. The beauty of engagement is that it allows you to start dictating the pace of something because you're involved, and because we're American, we're big enough, we can control. We lack that imagination. We have made ourselves insignificant by pretending we're so important that we won't engage. My God, what a stupid mistake. Viktor Orban's in America right now. Give him a damn audience. Let him speak. If I were the Speaker of the House, I'd ask for bring Viktor Orban into the Congress so he can give a speech about this peace process and ask, and be asked questions. Make it look like America's interested in peace. That would complicate the living hell out of Russia's diplomacy right now, because Russia would be like, okay, what do we got to do? We have to work now. Because up until now, I mean, I'm not saying the Russians don't want to work. Of course they want to work. But, right now, there's not much for them to do because America's not engaged. But now if America starts doing this, the Russians have to step up their game. They're fully capable of doing it, and I think they want to do it. But right now they don't have to do it because we're not doing it. This is a strategic error by the United States, a huge strategic error.
Yeah, and Orban's the coverage of Orban's peace mission all the way up into the NATO summit was in the U.S. mainstream media incredibly partisan. There's so much anger. The statements made by State Department spokespeople, it was all, well, Orban's a bad guy. MSNBC, they'll bring on Michael McFaul, the clown of the Obama administration, the so-called ambassador to Russia. He, said this on MSNBC that Orban should just leave NATO and they should just leave the EU and NATO, and because they just love Putin so much. It's like, you literally sound like someone in high school, like a child, when you talk like that. It's so unserious, but it just shows that the United States, yes, it does not do diplomacy. And what's interesting is that oftentimes, what you're intimating, Scott, is that, and this is something I've heard many times, and it's correct, but it could also be reframed, because it's the idea that Russia and China and, of course, the multipolar world, they get stronger the more that the United States behaves this way. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. But what's so interesting, too, is that now the collective West is sort of admitting it, as we see here. They keep on calling Putin an outcast, but yet Russia continues to gain more and more friends, closer and closer friends. And this could be reframed as, well, the United States is not only pushing them together, but they're also creating the conditions for whatever natural alliances, whatever, you said it with India, with Russia and China. India and Russia also have kind of this natural relationship given geography and history. There's all these natural alliances, and you could say that, well, the conditions are also created for the U.S. and NATO to become completely irrelevant. And I agree, Scott, when you said that, I said that maybe we can't predict NATO's collapse. I mean, that was Stephen Walt's words. I personally believe NATO's collapse is already happening. And it's things like this. We see the engagement. Bloomberg is admitting it. It's not just Modi. It's at everything that you said. The Modi visit, the Xi meeting, the peace mission, they go on, Erdogan and Putin continuously talking about, I think it's actually going to go ahead, Syria talks around peace. And then, of course, the DPRK relationship, which was also incredibly important. So, Scott, I think that, the point here is that this is kind of a suicide mission the United States and NATO are on, or the United States and its appendage NATO are on right now.
I agree. I mean, I am writing a book. I don't know when I'm going to finish it, but it's basically the working title is Ukraine and the Death of NATO. So it'll be a book about the Ukraine conflict, but more about how the Ukraine conflict was the final stake in the heart of the NATO vampire. I mean, because NATO lost all reason to exist after the end of the Cold War, and this thing that's been reformed and recreated it's a vampire. It sucks the life out of everything. There's nothing good about NATO. It brings nothing good to this world. It's destructive for Europe. It's destructive for the region. It's destructive for the world. But this conflict will be the kiss of death for NATO. because NATO's poured everything in. They've made it an existential conflict. It didn't need to be this way. I mean, NATO could have survived for another 25 years, but they've brought everything to a head here, and in doing so, they've exposed all of their frailties, all of their failings. Europe is not the homogeneous, unified entity that everybody wants it to be. Neither is NATO, and all those fractures will just blow apart when Russia wins in this conflict, which is why you see NATO panicking, and which is why we're actually in a very dangerous situation, because the West doesn't have any options for victory. They don't have anything. France can't send 60,000 troops. Poland isn't going to put air defense umbrella over Western or Ukraine. The United States set them straight today and said, no, that ain't going to happen. In Poland, well, I guess it's not going to happen. Nobody can do anything except lower the threshold for the use of nuclear weapons. And we are in a situation now, Russia is similarly lowering the threshold. The United States made a declaration today, I believe, that they will deploy intermediate range nuclear missiles in Europe starting next year. Russia recently said they're going to begin building the intermediate range nuclear missiles and deploying them in Europe. We're literally back to 1982, back to the height of the arms race in the 1980s that had both sides on the precipice of nuclear Armageddon, which is why we signed the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, the treaty that I was a weapons inspector implementing in the Soviet Union to get rid of these weapons. We're back to square one. Very dangerous times. But the difference is in 1982, I know because I was alive back then, I'm giving away my age, but we knew we were screwed. We knew it was dangerous. We knew how bad this was, which is why we were able to get this treaty off and running. And we wanted to make this treaty work because we understood the necessity of what we were doing. Today, the world just doesn't seem to be scared by this. There's a handful of people that are going, oh, yeah, I don't like this. But the vast majority of the world is going, Russia's bluffing. It's all a bluff. There's even some people out there, there's no such thing as nuclear weapons. No, it's all a big scam, big conspiracy theory. There's no nuclear weapons. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of nuclear weapons, and they will destroy the universe, or destroy the earth if they're used. They're real. They're very dangerous, and Russia's not bluffing. So you want to keep pushing it. Inside Russian academic circles and military circles, the people that advise Vladimir Putin and his inner circle, there's a growing tendency to support a policy of nuclear preemption. You see, NATO and the United States has said that their strategic goal is the strategic defeat of Russia, the strategic defeat of Russia. What that means, I mean, we had that Prime Minister of Estonia, I think, articulated.
Yeah.
It means we break Russia up into little pieces, and it's no longer a big country; it's little countries.
Unironically, as Estonia is literally a broken piece.
Yeah,
it's literally it only exists as a broken piece.
So this is what we're talking about. This is literally the strategy of Europe, of NATO, and the United States, is to break Russia up. And the Russians are looking at that, going, "All right, how are you going to do that?" And now they're talking about, we're going to build a 500,000 man rapid response force. We're going to be ready to do this, that, and the other thing. But what the threat is that they're going to deploy missiles into Europe that have the ability, if launched, to, hit targets in Russia in rapid order. We're back to, again, 1982. And the Russians are like, wait a minute. See, because the difference in 1982 is we had Pershing 2 missiles that could hit Moscow within 7 to 12 minutes of being fired. Very dangerous. But we didn't have an underlying policy seeking the strategic defeat of the Soviet Union. We actually had learned to peacefully coexist with the Soviet Union. That's the difference. Here we have a posture that says we want to strategically defeat Russia, and now we're deploying missiles into Europe. And it's not just the Mark 70 containerized missile launch system that we'll be deploying. in 2026. We have the Aegis Ashore, the Mark 41 system already in Romania, and we're going to be activating, turning over to NATO, the one in Poland. And these are containerized systems that can shoot cruise missiles and the SM-6 Typhoon surface-to-surface missile. So we already are putting in offensive strike systems. So Russia's going to do the same. But now Russia's looking at saying, well, we know what your intent is. So as soon as you get the capacity and you look like you're getting ready to pull the trigger on a preemptive strike against us, we're going to preemptively strike you. And one of the scenarios that's been put out there in leading Russian foreign affairs journals is to take out a Polish city. In the article, I think they postulated Poznan as the thing. They said, blow up Poznan, eliminate it from the face of the earth. And then turn to NATO and say, we'll do that to all of you if you continue this. And then you're telling the United States, oh yeah, don't even think about it because we'll take Boston out if you come after us. And then the question is an American president, and this was the question put out in the article, is an American president willing to sacrifice Boston for Poznan? And that's a legitimate question. Are the American people ready to sacrifice their entire existence for a Poland that's behaving irresponsible, that's tied to a strategy of strategically defeating Russia, whatever that means? This is the world we live in right now. And we are getting to the point right now, if the United States deploys those systems in 2026, where the Russians, if they lower the threshold of nuclear war, may preemptively strike with nuclear weapons. Yay. Yeah. Does it make you happy?
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/Danny Haiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.